Coraline is a tantalizing yet terrifying story about the psychology of wish fulfillment and abuse. On the surface, it looks like a stop-motion children's film, filled with wackiness and absurdity, although this movie has important themes that we can learn a lot from. Psychology is everywhere in this movie. The colors, world, and characters help us understand Coraline's feelings. Her positive social resources also add a lot of depth to the overarching message. They constantly try to help her out of harm's way and guide her to safety. When we think about the narrative more broadly, the entire film could serve as a powerful allegory for abuse. We have this girl who's in a transitionary period, clearly unhappy with her life. Then, a toxic person comes in and takes advantage of her insecurities for personal gain, wrapping up all these innocent people into her web of lies and deceit. So today, I wanted to break down the psychology in Coraline. Also, I want to talk about abusive behaviors and how to recognize them. I'm Very Berry. If you enjoyed this content, maybe like and share with your friends. Also, don't forget to hit that sub button and notification bell so you always see my latest videos. Coraline Jones moves into a dilapidated house named the Pink Palace with her family. Her parents work as writers for a gardening catalog. They are stressed to get their lives in order, having to juggle so many things at once. Coraline wants to explore the world, so she goes out into the forest where she runs into Wyborn, or YB for short. He tells her that his grandmother leases out the palace, but not to people with children. YB then gives her a doll that looks identical to herself, the same one being constructed at the beginning of the movie. Her parents send her on an empty mission to keep her preoccupied while they work. Her life is pretty tough right now. She was forced to move to a dingy old house, far away from her friends in previous life. She has to eat nasty food and spend time with parents who aren't invested in her life at the moment. Dealing with all of this as a kid can be soul-crushing. She seems depressed, and her psychological state is represented in the house. Everything looks drab and dreary. A lot of the colors are subdued and lifeless. When she takes notes, it's a microcosm of how she feels at that moment. Everything seems boring and horrible because Coraline is unhappy. While completing her task, she finds a door she wants to open badly. Sorry for the brief tangent, but I love how the rash on her hand symbolizes her feelings at this moment. She has this burning desire for something more in her life. When she comes back from the other world, the rash is gone because her desires have been sated. Coraline's mother opens the door to find a brick wall behind it. Disappointed by the day and the horrible dinner, Coraline goes to bed. At night, something peculiar happens. The door that once had bricks behind it now has tiny gerboas coming out of it. They wake up our hero and lead her back to the door. We travel through this beautiful and rapturing portal to another world. This previously lifeless house is now brimming with color. Coraline meets her other mother, who looks identical to her own besides having button eyes. Their appearance is the only similarity they share. Her regular mother doesn't seem to be invested in her life. Her other mother, by contrast, only fixates on her happiness. Her other father is very much the same. They both seem like way better parents on the surface. Instead of eating nasty food, she eats extravagant dinners. Instead of being ignored, she gets constant praise and admiration. Everything seems perfect compared to her normal life. She's riding the gravy train, so to speak. They promise her any and everything she could want. They even show her pictures of her old friends. Keep note of all these behaviors because they will be important in the abuse section of this video. Coraline wakes up to her mundane life again. Today is the day we visit the neighbors. Mr. Bobo trains Gerboas how to dance. He is a very passionate and flamboyant man who cares for his neighbor. He warns Coraline that the rats have told him to avoid that door at all costs. After visiting Mr. Bobo, she visits the other neighbors, Miss Spink and Miss Forcible. They are retired gymnasts with way too many Scotties. They too warn Coraline that danger is in her future if she continues down her current path. After visiting the locals, YB shows up to tell a story about his grandmother. He explains that she believes her sister was stolen. Night comes again, and Coraline enters the other world despite everyone's warnings. She is enthralled by the beauty and captivating elements of this place. Why have dead land when you can have this illustrious, illuminated display? You know life is good when you can play with the snapdragons. Her other family does so much to make her happy. They even changed this version of YB. He gets on Coraline's nerves, so they silenced him. Right now, things seem sketchy, but not necessarily to a kid. Why go back to this horrible life when I can have mountains of food, a beautiful garden, and a loving family? This curated world is exceptionally cruel. Any kid would love to have a dopamine rush like this. After another wonderful night in Otherworld, Coraline wakes up to reality. Sick of her circumstances, she instantly wants to go back. Her mother locked the door and hid the key out of concern for her daughter. She steals the key and sneaks back into the Otherworld. This time, she meets Wybie's cat, who warns her about Othermother. When she sits down with her other family for dinner, things become interesting. They tell Coraline she can stay here forever and have whatever she wants if she sews buttons into her eyes. Uncomfortable with this request, she begins to see the cracks in the facade. After going to sleep, something horrifying happens. Coraline wakes up trapped in the Otherworld. She meets Wybie's cat and they travel to the edge of this false creation. The Beldam devised this world to make Coraline happy, but none of it was real. This evil foe decides to up the ante and captures our hero. She traps her in another realm, where she meets Othermother's previous victims. One of these children was Wybie's grandmother's missing sister. Othermother trapped their souls, so Coraline sets out to retrieve them. Othermother steals her parents and forces her into a corner. She challenges this villainous spider to a game. If she can retrieve the captured souls, then she can be set free with her parents. Although, if she loses, she must give up her freedom. Coraline wins the game, but Othermother is a sore loser. The illusion crumbles and she falls into her enemy's web. She manages to escape and shut the door, but one of Beldam's hands gets through. Wybie and Coraline defeat this mechanical creature and throw the key away so no one is ever exploited again. After all these crazy events, life starts to look up for Coraline. She has a loving family, close friends, and a magical garden. Let's start with Coraline's character. She seems depressed, or at least deeply saddened by her current circumstances, which makes sense. No kid wants to spend their days in a creepy old house, basically alone. Her perspective is shown in the surrounding environments. Many areas look stripped of color. The lifelessness of the environments help the audience understand the extent of her feelings. The interactions she has feel methodical and empty. She already knows her mother is going to say, "I'll make it up to you." But where things get interesting is in the Otherworld. So many of Coraline's underlying psychological wants are showcased in the characters and environment. Here, everything is vibrant and colorful. Radiant light shining in the kitchen, spectacular gardens, but most of all, a loving family. These things showcase to some extent what Coraline thinks will make her happy. Even though Coraline is currently in a made-up reality, the emotions she feels are very real. When someone is in less than ideal circumstances, they can long for things they don't have. Coraline wants delicious food because her food sucks. She wants loving adult figures because the connection with her parents is struggling right now. The Otherworld could be thought of as a form of escapism to some extent, escaping from a life that is unfulfilling to this glorious wonderland. We can also see how our environment influences the way our brains process information. Coraline is unhappy at first, but she grows more discontent the longer she stays in the Otherworld. When we constantly get a dopamine high from unrealistic expectations, it can tarnish our existing circumstances. Her parents' lives don't allow them to be as attentive as Othermother. Most adults don't have that much time to invest into their children, but when Coraline lives in the Otherworld, this is the norm. These interactions psychologically distance her from her family. I think many people don't realize how cynical and twisted this story is. This movie is about exploiting and utilizing children's depressive feelings for power. There are so many covert types of manipulation and abuse that can be easily overlooked. The goal of these behaviors is to control people. Understanding and recognizing abuse is crucial to protect ourselves and each other. Othermother is the perfect villain because she's the perfect abuser. For starters, she tries to distance Coraline from the people who matter to her most, creating these fake people who she can rely on instead of real relationships. Although we have the benefit of hindsight, we know these people are fake. Her real goal in this interaction is to have this young girl reject her social resources. This type of abuse is pernicious because it can create a dependency on the abuser. When all your social resources are gone, you have to go somewhere for validation. Othermother wants this more than anything, to have Coraline be alone so she can use her for her own benefit. Her rapid personality change is another form of psychological manipulation. One moment, she will be really sweet and endearing. Then, without a moment's notice, she will transform into someone mean and combative. using all kinds of incentives that she knows Coraline is weak to. So let's talk about why this behavior is abusive. When someone flips the way they act on a dime, it can create dread or anxiety for the other person. If I do XYZ, will other mother praise me, or will I be beaten? Instilling this fear alone is enough to take a lot of agency from someone. Coraline might go out of her way to please this person, even though she doesn't want to, because she's terrified. It also creates a specific type of dependency that is really harmful. There are different types of psychological attachment styles. Some are healthy, others not so much. One of the scariest is disorganized attachment. This is where someone has a relationship of fear, but also dependency on the same person. The one you go to for comfort also scares the hell out of you. This type of relationship with another person can have devastating psychological effects. Although, other mother uses more than one psychological abuse tactic. Withholding emotions as a form of control is horrible, but this one is arguably the worst. Gaslighting is the idea that we can manipulate someone to the point where they begin to question their sanity. Pretending an event never happened is a good example. Oh my god, did you see that? No, nothing happened. You must be crazy. Then, this person begins to question their other interactions. Suddenly, they can't trust themselves anymore. Other mother implements this strategy by creating a false world for Coraline. She begins to have a hard time telling what's real. Are these amazing, loving feelings genuine or part of the illusion? All these designs have an explicit goal in mind: question her sanity, especially when she goes to sleep. The other world is so identical to her own that at certain points in time, she can't tell where she is. This is by design. Many abusers want their victims in this exact state. The moment of questioning allows them to exert so much control over another person.
We aren't worried at all, darling. Soon you'll see things our way.
Many cult leaders employ this tactic as a means to stay in charge. Power dynamics is another powerful tool in regard to abuse. Other mother can elicit unilateral control of the circumstances. She can manipulate other father and YB completely. Plus, power dynamics also come in the form of age differences. The beldam preys on children because they are the most susceptible to manipulation. Someone older would likely see through the sick entrapment, but a child is the perfect person to groom. Luckily, social resources can be a good deterrent to abuse. Social resources are another form of psychology demonstrated in the movie. Her neighbors and the other family show us the difference between positive and negative resources. Mr. Bobo, Miss Spank, and Miss Forcible always try to empower and guide Coraline. For example, they warn her about her future, but never tell her what to do. They give their input, but the choice is ultimately hers. The interactions in this movie can show us the power of these bonds. Coraline wouldn't be able to defeat Other Mother without the help of those around her. Beldam's manipulation worked so well because she tried to socially isolate Coraline. She pulled the wool over this kid's eyes, but the positive bonds in her life helped her see through the facade. Social resources can be a direct counter to abuse. Oftentimes, it only takes one or two people to help others get out of toxic dynamics. This film shows us just how important those bonds can be at crucial points in our lives. Plus, we understand what a lack of access to reliable bonds can cultivate. People who don't have meaningful connections with those around them are often bigger targets for abusers. Coraline didn't truly recognize the value of her relationships until the end of the movie. But before this, she largely ignored their good advice. Coraline shows us just how powerful the relationships we cultivate can be during times of adversity. Thanks for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. Coraline is a powerful movie about the impacts of abuse and positive relationships in our lives. By watching this film, we can better identify emotional withdrawal, gaslighting, forced social isolation, and other abusive tendencies. Recognizing these patterns is crucial because abuse is still a huge problem today. Many youth and adults get entrapped into toxic relationships. The company we keep can help protect us from predators. I like that even though this movie seems like it's geared towards kids, this film is important for everyone. That's why it's fundamental that we find our own Mr. Bobo or Miss Spink, so that during times of struggle, we don't fall into the hands of our own version of Other Mother. It can be nice to ride the gravy train, but if Coraline shows us anything, it's that investing in genuine relationships makes all the difference. Let me know down in the comments what you took away from Coraline. Also, do you agree with this breakdown, or do you see the movie differently? I'd love to hear from you.